evening, everyone. Welcome to the first of our series of Fireside Chat. We have a great panel lineup for discussion today and also a great moderator. My name is Yvette McLean-Pelliner. I'm the Vice President for Jamaican Women of Florida, and I will be on the call just for a few minutes to help our moderator navigate the conversations and also monitor the chat, okay? Like I said earlier, I just dropped in the chat a disclaimer. Just please go ahead and take a few minutes and read that before we start. I also want you to think about this question as you enter into this space. I want you to drop one word to describe how you have been feeling lately. Go ahead and put that in the chat. One word to describe how you have been feeling lately. I see you relaxed. That's good. That's a good overwhelmed. We can talk about that later. So at least you can acknowledge where you're at. So that's good.
Mhm.
All right, you can keep dropping in the chat some of the thoughts or feelings that you have been having lately. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce to you our moderator for tonight. So our moderator is the founder and clinical director for Empowerment Counseling and Psychotherapy Services. She's also very much a specialist in the space of culturally responsive and trauma-informed care for the Caribbean especially. And also she help people to navigate anxiety, depression, and also life transitions. And speaking about no other than Miss Sharita Gale. So you can give her a clap and welcome her in this space. Sharita, go ahead.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm assuming everyone is on Eastern Standard Time, or if you're on Jamaican time, it's still good evening. So, as we get started, and before I introduce our lovely panelist, right? Um, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Green for Mental Health Awareness Month. I see Miss Rivers has on her green. So, when we think of mental health, right? Mental health is such a broad area. It's similar to just health overall. So, mental health is on a spectrum, and everyone has mental health, just like physical health. So, sometimes when we hear mental health, we immediately think, oh, it must be a crisis, or when we think mental health, it must be some type of like diagnosis. But the truth is, mental health includes how we think, how we feel, how we act, how we cope with stress, how we manage our emotions, how we relate to others, how we rest, uh, how we carry responsibilities, and just overall how we function through everyday life, right? So, just like how we can experience exhaustion, pain, burnout, illness, I'm not sure if anyone put that in the chat if they're feeling like burnt out. I know someone said overwhelmed, right? The body can experience emotional exhaustion as well as anxiety, discomfort, and just overall, like just stress internally. So, whenever we experience these things, we notice that they are sometimes invisible, right? And it's not visible on the outside. So, today's chat, we want to just bring a little bit more awareness to that. So, with tonight's conversation, it's important for us, if we're carrying something silently, while showing up for work, showing up for family, showing up for whatever leadership roles we're in, showing up for our caregiving roles, showing up in ministry, parenting, relationships, the community overall. We want to go from just surviving, right? To and stop going from just appearing strong. So, our hope with this session tonight is not just only to raise awareness, but to normalize an honest conversation around emotional wellness, to reduce the shame, to strengthen our connection within our diaspora community. So whether you are personally struggling, you are supporting someone that is probably, struggling, or you simply want to
Bro,
learn more.
what?
Shayna, we hope you leave tonight feeling seen, informed, heard, encouraged, and reminded that you do not have to navigate this alone, right? So, we're going to have three different segments within tonight's fireside chat. And of course, before moving on, we want to take a moment. I know our VP Yvette has put something in the chat for us, just a little disclaimer and information if you once you look in the chat to see. While this is intended to be a safe space and a supportive space and an honest space, this is not a clinical or a therapeutic setting. So we just want to make that clear, right? Our panelists will be sharing their insights, whatever tools they have, their professional perspectives, but will not be able to provide personal counseling within this fireside chat. So everything that's discussed here, if something comes up for you personally, we encourage you to contact a licensed professional or a trusted support system afterwards, and we'll be sharing resources as well afterwards. So I will be introducing our panelists, and I will start first with Dr. Bennett. So, Dr. Bennett, thank you for being here today. Dr. Bennett is a nurse practitioner and a psychiatry specialist with over 18 years in healthcare. She is passionate about helping women move from surviving to truly thriving. As a practice owner, she creates safe, empowering spaces where women can feel, take real practical steps towards better mental health and overall wellness without judgment. Her approach blends clinical expertise with compassion, guiding women to reclaim balance, clarity, and control over their lives. Put some hearts in the chat for Dr. Bennett. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So next we have Renee Rivers. So Renee Rivers is the founder of Reflective Rivers Therapy and Consulting. Miss Rivers is a trauma therapist, a speaker, and of course, like I mentioned, the founder of Reflective Rivers Therapy and Consulting. She helps high achieving women heal beneath the surface while continuing to lead with excellence. Her work centers on breaking intergenerational cycles and supporting women, especially from Caribbean and Black communities, in building healthier relationships, emotional resilience, and a stronger sense of self. You can find Miss Rivers on social media, Instagram at Reflective Rivers. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And our third panelist, do we have her on? VP, is she here?
I'm not seeing her, so we're gonna go ahead and skip. If she joins, then we'll go ahead and
Okay,
introduce her.
no problem. Hold on one second. All right. So before we enter our first segment, using one word only, what does being strong feel like for you lately? Drop it in the chat if you feel safe to do so.
And I'm monitoring the chat, Sharita. So far,
Thank
I see
you.
I'm empowered, lonely, yet empowered.
Yeah. I'm sure many of us here probably feel the same way or have felt that way.
And I see
Resilient.
lonely, but I also see resilient.
Yes,
I see peaceful and empowered, feeling okay to be vulnerable.
definitely. Yes. And I see a theme with the empowerment.
Yeah, I see that too.
Definitely.
All right, so that's a
All
few from the
right.
chat. If
So,
more
yeah,
comes in, I'll
so
let
our
you know.
first segment is breaking the mask, right? So, with breaking the mask, when we think about a shared experience that we all have, right? Honesty comes to mind, connection, right? So, this segment is all about our shared experience. It's about helping. It's about just seeing ourselves within this conversation that we are going to have. So, for Dr. Bennett and Miss Rivers, we're talking about strong on the outside, and that can mean different things to different people, right? What does that phrase mean to you personally, culturally, or even in your line of work? And I will start with you first, Miss Rivers.
Yes, thank you. Great question. I think for me, I'm a first generation American. So my parents are from the islands, and I've always watched them do everything, work 16, 11 jobs and provide for the family and go to church and show up on time and serve the community and then raise the kids. And so for me, being strong on the outside means I often see that with people who are high functioning. You're doing all the things, you're showing up in all the places, but on the inside, nobody really knows what's going on. Nobody knows that sometimes you take a longer shower because you need to cry a little bit. Nobody knows that you struggle to ask for help because maybe as a child you asked for help and nobody showed up. And so you learn to do everything by yourself. Nobody knows that you're trying to do exactly what your mom did, not realizing that it was a different time and it's not sustainable in this era. And so I see this a lot with the high functioning population I work with. They're in leaderboards, they're doing everything on the outside, but then the marriage might be fractured, the relationship with the children might be fractured, the relationship with themselves is definitely fractured. And so I see it a lot with people who are showing up. You're working, you're parenting, you're providing, you're serving, but you don't stop to take care of yourself as often as you should. You don't feel as comfortable asking for help because that strength that you believe that you need to have, that you need to carry in that way, has conditioned you to survive. And so that's
Yeah.
what for me it looks like to be strong on the outside.
Thank you for that. And that is something that resonates with a lot of us, no matter what Caribbean island,
Mhm.
right? We are from, and it's learned behaviors over time. But thank you for that, Miss Rivers. Dr. Bennett?
So for me, growing up in a Caribbean household, being strong on the outside meant to watch mom and dad do everything as well. They showed up on time, they showed up to everything, but at home things were very different.
Yeah.
And I grew up understanding that what people saw on the outside as strength was very different from what we learned at home. And so we learned to put on that mask. You learn very quickly that what people see on a general basis was not the truth. And as an adult, you also learn to wear that mask. The strength
Yeah.
that everyone wants to see is what you show, especially as a Caribbean woman. You learn very quickly,
Mhm.
very early on, and even your daughters learn very early on in this day and age to wear that mask, that the strength that people want to see. You don't cry in public. You don't do this. You don't do that. You sit up tall. You show
Yeah.
your strength outright. And weakness is a thing that is frowned upon. And it's if you're not showing up every day, if you're not showing the strength that people want to see, you're considered weak.
Yeah.
And so that to me is what this being strong on the outside shows. And like you said, you may
Definitely.
take a little longer shower because you need to cry a little bit, but you never want anyone to see that weakness. You never want anyone to see you not being strong. And so we
Yes.
learn that at such an early age.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Bennett. And when it comes again to our younger generation, right? And just this learned um, masking, when it's time to seek help, right? That support or seeking help, sometimes in our communities is seen as weakness. So thank you both for bringing light, to that. Next question. This question is going to be for you, Dr. Bennett. How might some of these same messages, right, that we're hearing make it harder for people to express emotions or seek support when they're struggling?
The messages that we put forth, especially in the Caribbean community, you see it in other communities as well, but mental health has such a stigma in our community that seeking help for mental health makes you into one of those people. Even growing up, we all had that stigma instilled in us that you didn't want to be those people. You didn't want to be the weak one. You didn't want to be the one that needed assistance. And it has come about even now in my family. I see it all the time, even with what I do. And it's you don't need that. You don't need this. They don't need that. Those people don't need that. They need to, it's almost as though you're telling them to shake it off if there's something mentally wrong. It's like telling someone with a broken leg to walk it off. Oh, they can, they can just walk that off. It's okay. So people
Yeah,
are afraid to seek help. They're afraid of how they will be seen. They're afraid of what will be said to them by their families, by their friends. And so it's the stigma that surrounds seeking any type of mental assistance, any type of help at all. So much needed assistance with
yeah,
what our community needs right now. So all of that stigma that surrounds that makes it so difficult to seek help. Help that could change our community in ways beyond what we could imagine.
that's true. And
Mhm.
thank you for clarifying that. So, my next question is for you, Miss Rivers. Can you share a moment personally or professionally where someone appeared strong on the outside, but was actually struggling underneath?
Oh yeah, I'll share a personal story, and I'm writing about this, and I've sent him the draft, and so I can share this publicly. So the story is about my father, and I know we're a group of women, but I think it's important to shed light on sometimes how high functioning people are suffering in silence. So my dad was educated in Haiti, and he was an engineer. And then when he came to the US, they stripped him of his education and he had to start over. And so in the US, he started off as a janitor and he worked his way up. He was, at Holy Cross and the city of Pembroke Pines, and he became a assistant director at some point. But it was always over like the sanitation department. And so my dad would work 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then 3 p.m. to midnight. And then he would come home. And this was Monday through Friday. And so when I was in my master's program, I did an assignment and they asked me to write about my father, or they asked me to write about my upbringing. And I wrote 2 lines about my father because me and my father had a very tense relationship. After I was 16, there was some infidelity that happened and it really broke our relationship. And so for a while, I was just distant from my father. So my professor said to me, "You need to go home and talk to your father." And I said, "Why?" They said, he raised you, you wrote 2 lines about him, and you don't really know him. And they say, don't interview him like a client, but go and talk to him and understand his story because you don't have the perspective that you need to have to be a thorough clinician. I said, I'm going to take the B. And then I sat on it and I sat on it and I said, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna interview him. And so in having a conversation with my father, this man who was highly educated, he could do math in his sleep and people respected him and revered him, very charismatic. If you see him, you would love him. Everybody loves to be around Raymond. And so I started asking him questions about his upbringing because he was never home. And in moments where we would sit together and have family dinners, he would prefer to eat in front of the TV away from us. And so I asked him questions specifically about that. And he said, growing up, my mother and father weren't married. I grew up at a cousin's house because my dad had the money and my mother did not. So when I became of age, my dad took me from my mom and I went to go live with my cousin. And then when I got old enough, I was about 14, they said, okay, now the boys are 14 and 15, him and his brother. We can't have them here with the girls, the cousins. They need to go to their father. So when he was with my step grandmother, right? And my grandfather, he was the outside kid. So he brought shame to my step grandmother. So she would separate intentionally him from his half siblings, right? And so he would never be able to eat family dinner at the dinner table.
Mhm.
And when he told me that story, he started to tear up. And he said to me, "Why are you asking me these questions?" And I said, "I'm just trying to understand you." So when I went back to Tallahassee and I finished that paper, I did it from a space of empathy because I understood that my dad came from a fractured family. And so he didn't know how to have an intact one. And he was triggered by family dinners, which is why he was never there. But he never said, I can't sit at dinner because I'm uncomfortable because I couldn't sit there as a kid. He just worked and worked and worked to avoid the time that we would have dinner together. And so it got me to understand that some of the things that people don't talk about, especially in the Caribbean, we don't know what they've gone through, what they've survived, what they normalized, and what they avoided talking about. And sometimes we need to go back to our elders and have conversations. And it won't go back. We can't go back and heal the wounds from our childhood, but we can understand a little bit more why they did what they did and why they operated the way they did. My dad was surviving. Even as an adult, he was surviving. And I got to realize that he did the best that he could. He still provided, he still protected. He just could not sit at those dinners with us because it did something different for him, because it meant something different. So you might see somebody who appears to be working all the time, have a really good face in public, but underneath that, there's a story. There's a layer. It might be suffering. It might even be a story that they never even told. And so I say that we might see the strength, we might see the glory, we might see the praise, but you don't always know the story. And so that's my story of people who are
Thank
strong on the
you.
outside but suffering.
Thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
so many of our parents and their parents have suffered, silently. And it really just takes that sitting down with them. Hey, like what happened?
Hmm.
Not why are you like this? What
Yeah.
happened? What were some things that you experienced, if you would like to share, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Exactly.
thank you for that. So I'm
Yeah.
going to pause a little bit because we do have our third panelist here, and that is Miss Suzette Camille Buchanan. And I would like to read her bio, please. All right. So, Miss Suzette Camille Buchanan is the Chief Executive Officer of the Bellevue Hospital in Kingston, Jamaica, a powerhouse in mental health advocacy. Miss Buchanan is transforming how care is delivered and experienced across Jamaica and beyond. As the CEO of Bellevue Hospital, she's leading a bold shift to make mental health care more accessible, human-centered, and stigma-free. She's also the voice behind Mindset Jamaica's groundbreaking TV platform, changing how we talk about mental health in our communities. Recognized globally for her impact, Ms. Buchanan brings both expertise and lived experience to the conversation because this work is personal. You can find her on social media, TikTok. Her username on TikTok is at Camille Buchanan 323. And on Instagram, her username is Camille with one L Buchanan. Thank you, Ms. Buchanan.
Thank you so much for having me. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. So, within our first segment, Ms. Buchanan, we were talking about just breaking the mask. So, we have a question for you. When it comes to breaking the mask and us being strong, right, on the outside, it can mean different things to different people. So, in many Caribbean households and across many cultures, messages like be strong or handle it or cut and go through, right,
Mm,
often comes from a place of survival and resilience. In what ways have you seen these
mhm.
messages protect or support individuals and families?
I mean, I think it is more harm than good because especially for being at the hospital and having a total of 500, of that amount, 400, we have social cases, which simply means these persons have been abandoned. They've been here for years. When you walk and you speak to many of them, 75% of our residents here, one of the things that they will tell you that they are in the institution primarily because they have not dealt with their past trauma. And some will tell you that in a household where they were the eldest child, they are the eldest child, they assume the responsibility as mommy and daddy at an early age. Especially for our women, what is common among them, they'll tell you that as women, we were told to be strong for our little brothers, be
Yeah.
strong for our neighbors, be strong for the boys because you are the strong ones. We are depending on you. And so they have been layering trauma over the years. And now they've gotten to a point where they have now exploded. As it relates to the men, 70%, 90% of our residents here, they are men. So of the 400 social cases that we have, 350 of the social cases that we have happens to be men. And they will also tell you that they have had to suppress pain, suppress their emotions, not show vulnerability because they are supposed to be strong. They're supposed to handle it, man up. And so they sought help late. And early detection when it comes down to mental health is very, very important. So that's the Bellevue
Thank you.
reality, and that's the Jamaica reality.
Right. Thank you for that. And you mentioned something really important, that early identification, right? Sometimes
Absolutely.
we save more within our healthcare system with preventative as well as early identification, right? Versus just something that is, afterwards. The price of the healthcare
Absolutely.
system goes up. So thank you for that, Miss Buchanan. Uh, as we think about walking alongside our friends, our families, and especially our community, we see that many people are carrying things still, they're carrying it silently. So when we get into segment 2, which is next, we're going to talk more about what it really looks like. So segment 2 is real talk on mental health. This is where
Sharon, just a moment.
Mhm.
Sharon is marking the screen. So Sharon, can you stop marking on the PowerPoint screen, please? Go ahead, you're good.
Okay. So with segment 2, this is where we name the real challenges and shift the conversation towards awareness, right? So the first question is for Dr. Bennett. Dr. Bennett, what's one harmful misconception about mental health that you wish our communities would let go of?
That one can just will it away, that they can will themselves to be better, or they can go out and exercise and their depression will go away, that they can take a hot shower and their anxiety will go away. That absolutely drives me crazy when the families tell their loved ones that you take a walk outside and you'll feel better. They're depressed. It's not going
Yeah.
anywhere without proper treatment, without proper therapy.
Hmm.
In our communities, we tend to want everyone to will away their mental illness, and it runs rampant in our community.
It
To
does.
will away whatever is going on. That you can do it, just make yourself feel better.
Yeah.
And I find
Or
that
I
a
can
lot
do
of
it. You can do it too.
exactly, I did it, you can do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or so and so did it. And look at them.
Mhm.
They turned out fine.
Turned out okay. Yes.
Right. So
And it
again, that
happens
brings
quite a
us
bit.
back to mental health is on this spectrum, right?
Mhm.
And our mental health is our health.
It
It's the
is.
same as our physical health. Thank you
Mhm.
for that, Dr. Bennett. Miss Rivers, what are some mental health challenges that you're seeing, especially within the Caribbean or within the diaspora communities, that people don't really talk about openly?
Oh yeah. I think it echoes what Dr. Buchanan said. It's we're not talking about the things that are happening behind the scenes, right? I see a lot of high functioning depression where people are doing everything, but then they're never satisfied. They don't feel joy. They don't experience the good feeling. So there's the emotional suppression of happiness and joy, but then there's the over expression of anger and irritability and frustration. And we're normalizing these things, right? I sat in a room with a client who was just really sharp with her husband and she was snapping at him. And I said, "Is this how you normally speak to him?" "Oh, yeah, that's how he is. He can handle it, but it's not okay. This is not
Yeah.
normal." Just because you think you saw it growing up and you didn't realize that maybe your mother was exhausted and tired and burnt out. This is not normal behavior. And so I see severe anxiety for everyone across the spectrum, from children to adults who are anxious because they want to be perfect and high achieving. They have to accomplish things, accomplishment after accomplishment, and they never celebrate. And they also never take a vacation. So what are you doing all this work for if you never enjoy it and you never celebrate it because you're never satisfied? And so this leads to anxiety and chronic depression where you have really, really low lows and moments where your mind is racing and you can't stop it. And so I
Mm.
see unresolved intergenerational grief. One of the tools that I put in the resource is I created a customized Maslow hierarchy of needs. So you can see sometimes the ceiling for your parents is the floor for you. And we're not talking about these things. And so you think because you want to go explore and frolic and have fun, and they're like, oh, you just need to get a job and relax and that's enough. Get the house and the food and you don't need anything
Yeah.
else. That they're hating on you or they don't appreciate you, but they don't realize that these things are attainable. And so there's the intergenerational trauma where you can't speak to people because you don't have empathy, you don't have perspective, and you're just bitter because you think people just don't want to understand you. And then there's the issues around the church. We are church going folks, and the church has not really evolved to accept conversations around mental health. I've seen a lot of churches do a lot of great work, and I've seen a lot of churches do some harm. And so we need to make sure that the community that we're leaning on, whether it's communities like this wonderful organization, Jamaica Women of Florida, or the churches or the places that we go for school and learning and education and employment, understand us in this generation and what we bring.
Yes.
And so I see a lot of people who are afraid to speak up because they're simply afraid that nobody will understand. And when they do, the person responds in a way that confirms that fear. And so they
Yeah.
go right back into that pattern. And so there's a lot of shut down and you go back because you don't believe that somebody can hear you or see you or reach you.
Mm.
Hmm.
Thank you for that. And you mentioned that you put something in our toolbox for what we are going to give our participants after.
Yes.
And there are going to be like a list of clinicians on there as well. So
Hmm.
sometimes I know when we reach out to our family members and we want to be vulnerable to them, it's better to go to a clinician
Yes.
where you can
Yes.
be seen and heard. So thank you for that. The
Yes.
next question is for Miss Buchanan. How does cultural stigma show up when it comes to mental health?
Oh, boy, cultural stigma. You know, stigma in general is just so very unfortunate. And one of the reasons why many persons have not sought help. Here in Jamaica, and certainly in many parts of the Caribbean, um, people believe that, well, let's take, for example, Jamaica has the most church per square mile. And so we do believe that we should pray it off. It will go away.
Mhm.
um, we are praying. What you do find, what happens within this institution is so often is that persons are here and they do not get the opportunity to stay here throughout the prescribed period for their treatment, because family members will find creative ways of getting them out of the institution
Yes.
because they should come and see a spiritual leader. So when it comes on to Jamaica and the Caribbean and the culture, people will, that is high, the priority when it comes on to that, where this will stand in the way of many persons seeking treatment. The
Yes.
language that is used, the word mad is extremely offensive, and I will do anything just to eradicate that word. Just how it is used loosely. Even on occasions when we are complimenting ourselves, we're in the tendency, I know Jamaicans say, you look mad in that, mad dress. And so that word being loosely, used loosely, stands in the way of persons getting help, especially our men also. The men, as I mentioned the numbers earlier in Jamaica and across the Caribbean, I would assume that the men, when it comes down to the men are not open to seeking help. And the language contributes to that as well, because in Jamaica, people don't want to hear the word mad being used. And so it comes back to our education system. I've had conversation with the Ministry of Education because I do believe if we are going to change the narrative, if we're going to change how people view mental illness, if we're going to change the culture, then we have to start with we have to start when they're young. A mental health condition has a way of manifesting itself mostly in the adolescent years. So if we begin the teaching at an early age, talking about what to say and what not to say, that will certainly arrest the stigma, because in the Caribbean, the stigma is extremely loud. And part of it,
Yeah.
as I've mentioned, it is using the correct language. Part of
Yes.
it is just how manning up,
Mm-hmm.
not showing emotions, even with women, not showing vulnerability, will not readily speak, openly and honestly speak about how you feel. So these are just some of the things as it relates to the culture and the stigma. If we
Thank
are
you.
to fix it, we have to begin with the language,
Yes.
changing how we talk about it.
Yes, definitely. So that emotional literacy surrounding mental illness, mental wealth overall, we definitely agree with you with that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, as we move on to our next segment, I would like for us to just kind of take a few deep breaths and just to recognize the importance of our breath and how deep breathing can help to reset whatever stress hormones we have, that cortisol levels, right? So let's all just do this exercise together. If you would like, you can close your eyes. You don't have to, but take a deep breath for a moment, in through your nose and out through your mouth. Hold it. 1, 2, 3. Exhale. As you're doing this, think about releasing your shoulders. Imagine some of that stress leaving your body. Keep your feet on the floor. The next deep breath in. 1, 2, 3. Exhale. As we take our next deep breath, just slow it down. I want you to become more present and respond more intentionally, right? Because sometimes we're always in survival mode. Many of us are probably still at work right now, or have come from work, or are thinking about work tomorrow. So our last deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, deep exhale. All right. Thank you for that. You can put in the chat how you're feeling after taking those deep breaths. So as we enter segment three is all about tools for daily wellness. Okay. We've talked about the weight that people carry. Now we are going to shift to what can we do to help? So this question is for all our participants. What's one simple tool everyone on the chat now can use daily to regulate their nervous system? I can start with you, Miss Buchanan.
Kindness. Being kind to someone, I've always said that, being kind is extremely powerful, and it is underestimated, underrated. When you are kind to someone, you benefit from that kindness as well. It's not just the recipient. Be kind in our actions, be kind in our thoughts, you know, be kind, just be kind in general. Do not shy away from paying someone a compliment. That could change their entire day. It could change their entire week. Just kindness in general. Walking over to someone and saying, just being kind, can I buy you lunch today? Asking the question, are you okay? And not just asking it in passing, but asking it and giving them an opportunity to speak and offer tangible assistance. Saying to someone that, hey, I am here for you, and meaning it.
Yes.
So these are just some of the things. kindness is so very, very important. The power of a hug, I
Mm,
cannot tell you, because there are days when I'm truly under the valley, and just to be asked if I'm okay, it
yeah.
makes my day. Just I most recently, a staff member is walking the compound as I was a while ago. And a staff member last week said to me, Miss Buchanan, things appears to be heavy. Is it okay to give you a hug? And within that moment, I hugged her. And
Mm.
I haven't cried in months. And I just started to cry, because that moment of kindness meant everything to me within that moment.
Thank you for that. Oh, can everyone feel the kindness? Yes, I see the hearts, compassion, kindness, hugs, right? Oxytocin all around. All right. So, Miss Rivers, same question for you. What's one simple tool that we can use daily to regulate our nervous system?
Yeah, no, I love that you share that, Dr. Buchanan. There's actually some research out there that says 4 hugs a day you need for survival, eight
Yes.
hugs you need for maintenance, and 12 hugs for growth.
Yeah.
And so hugging is a good dose of medicine. But for me, it's really checking in. I feel things and I don't even pay attention to it. I just move right past it. Right? I might wake up in the morning and I'm irritated and then I just keep going. And so it's important to pause and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? When you feel that thing, so that you can figure out what you need in order to feel better. Because sometimes we are overwhelmed and we don't name it and we just keep it moving because we've been taught to just keep pushing through. Sometimes we're emotionally shut down, and there are people we could get a hug from that we look at them and we don't even look approachable because we're so shut down. And so if we need a hug and our face is given the meanest face that we can give because we're emotionally shut down, we're not going to get that hug. And so you have to stop and ask yourself, what am I feeling and what do I need? I have the privilege now, and I know it's a privilege of starting my mornings very slow. My husband takes the kids to school. I lay in that bed. When he comes home, we go for a walk. And that is a privilege, being able to go for a walk. No music. Sometimes we're not even talking to each other. I'm just listening to the birds. I'm just looking at the grass and watching the flowers. And those moments, whether it's a 30-minute walk or we're able to walk for the full hour, that time to just slow down and have moments where we can just be admonishing what God has created. Those moments of stillness, of being able to just breathe, are a gift
Mm.
that we have to give ourselves. And we take those things for granted. Because, yes, I would love for you to
Amen.
come to the office, but there are things that you can do every day. Go
That's true.
walking. Go stand by the water. We live in South Florida and on the island of Jamaica. Go listen to the water crash against the wave, against the shore. Just listening to the water, experiencing nature, and going outside. We're already deficient in vitamin D being people of color. So it's
Yes,
not going to hurt us to be out in the sun. And so those things
definitely.
that we take for granted that we can do for just 5, 10 minutes, you have
Yes,
the opportunity to do it. Do it. Go take a walk. Go
yes.
pay attention and watch what's happening outside without the distractions of the headphones and the phones. And those are things that you can help regulate. Check in with
Thank
yourself
you.
and gift yourself what you need.
I love that. And I love that you mentioned the vitamin D because as clinicians, we know we want to rule out any type of health conditions first before we treat. And as melanated people, we are low in vitamin D, y'all. Go out in the
Yes.
sun, go in the
Mhm.
sun, right?
Yep.
And check your thyroids. I'm not a doctor. I'm just saying go to the doctor.
Yeah.
But see, now, Dr. Bennett, your turn because you are a specialist. What's one
So
simple tool that we can use daily to regulate our nervous system?
a meditation practice,
Mm,
hmm
yes.
which many of us who are constantly running and going, we think that we cannot, but we can. And it helps to regulate your nervous system, helps to slow things down, helps you to start from ground zero. And in the morning, if you can, in the morning before you start your day, helping you to start from a place of peace
Yes.
before the rest of the world gets a chance to start off with the ripping and the running. It helps you to start off peacefully, help you start off in a regulated fashion.
Yes.
Okay. And starting off that way, once a day is all it takes. If you have 10, 15 minutes in the morning, if you have 5 minutes in the morning, if that's all you have, then that's all you need. With a slow breathing, the slow breaths, and just take in your surroundings. Listen, you don't even have to listen to music. You don't have to listen to anything. Take in your surroundings around what's going on, nice and quiet, peaceful, maybe some incense in the background to kind of gauge your sense of smell, engage your
Yeah.
sense of smell, and sort of bring yourself into your morning. And you start off your morning gently instead of the way that we usually started off with the alarms blaring and you're jumping out of bed, you're going, you're ripping and running. That's not the way we're meant to start off.
Very true. I hear peace,
Mm-hmm.
alignment,
Yeah.
balance.
Mm-hmm. And
So
when you
thank you
start
for
your day
that.
off that way, it
Yes.
yeah, it gives you a sense of peace throughout the day.
Yes.
You'll feel the difference when
And
things
if you
come your
felt
way.
that way, put it in the chat. Does it work for you? Are you going to try this? So another question. How can someone shift their internal dialogue from surviving to healing? And any one of you panelists can take this question.
Oh, I love this. I put a resource in the toolkit, and it's called it's the nervous system check-in, and then at the bottom half of it, it talks about from survival patterns to well-being practices. So the first thing you have to do is realize that you're doing a survival pattern. That's it. We talked about this just now. When you wake up in the morning, the alarm goes off, and you're everybody get up, get out, move, move,
Yeah.
everybody go. That's survival. Why are you rushing? Get up at 30 minutes earlier so you don't have to
Hmm.
rush. So you can start the tea in the morning and you
Yeah.
can calm down and nobody has to yell. And I'm not pointing the finger because I had to point it at myself first. My daughter, who was about 6 years old at the time, she said, Mommy, why do you yell at us every morning? And I said, because you guys don't get up. And when I get you up, you go back to sleep and I need you guys to move. And she goes, what time do we have to be out? And I said, you got to be out by 7:25. She goes, okay. Can you put a clock in my room? I will pay attention. If I'm not ready by 7:20, then you can yell. Those kids are never late. I don't have to yell anymore. We're communicating. I understand that that was a survival pattern because that's what my mother did. Because she
Yes.
had a limited amount of time before she had to get to work. And if those people on her job talk to her, she's gonna talk to us more.
Mm.
I'm not going to nobody's job. I work for myself. Why am I yelling at my kids?
Yeah.
And so I had to learn
Well,
that
you
that
said you
was
have the privilege of that, which is
right.
awesome. Yeah.
Right. And so you have to recognize what are the
And
survival
identify.
patterns. Some of us
Mhm.
eat our food and we inhale our food. We don't even taste it.
Yeah.
Slow down. Slow down. You need to taste the ackee and saltfish. It's so good. You took the time to make it. Eat it slow. And so it's first of all recognizing that it is a survival pattern. And that can be hard because some of these survival patterns look like strength and they're
Yeah.
not. And so you
Thank you
first
for
have to
that.
recognize what it is and then incorporate something else. And it's not about doing all things at once. We're not aiming for perfection. We're aiming for progress. So pick one thing and work on that for 3 months. And then
Yeah.
pick something else and work on that for 3 months. So don't drive yourself crazy trying to find everything because there's going to be a lot to find. And so
Yes.
slow down, give
Practice
yourself
and
grace.
repetition is best.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then be
Love it.
open to people around you not being on board. Because
Yeah.
some people, when you start changing, they're going to say, oh, you're brand new. But yeah, I look like I'm at peace though, right?
Hello. Hello.
Hmm.
Working on all health.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for that. One last question. I know we have about 8 minutes left, and we do want to get to, I'm not sure if there are some questions for our panelists in the chat. Yvette, are there any questions for our panelists in the chat? If not, I can ask two more questions. Oh, I just saw a question pop up. But
I'm
how do
looking.
we know if each panelist can just take 1 minute to let us know, how do you know when it's time to seek help and how can we start? If each panelist, and we'll start with Dr. Bennett, then Miss Buchanan, and then Miss Rivers. So Dr. Bennett, how
Mhm.
do we know when it's time to seek help and how can we start?
You need to seek help before you've come to the end of your rope. When you're starting to feel as though things may be a little bit too much, when you start to feel as though life is unmanageable,
Yes,
more than you can do for yourself.
yes,
But we don't want to wait until things are out of control. Things are spiraling. We don't want to wait until you're spiraling, until you feel as though things are more than you can handle outside of your daily life. So you want to
Yeah.
seek help when you start to feel as though something is changing. Something is changing, something is different for you. Meditation. I'm looking at the chat at the same time, sorry.
That's
But
okay.
I'm looking and you feel as though something is changing within you and it's more than you want to handle, more
Yeah.
than you want to physically, mentally, emotionally handle. For me, that's the setting point, not
Okay.
your breaking point, but your setting
Yeah.
point.
I love that setting point.
Okay.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's usually the point where I tell people
All
that
right.
it's time to seek help. Look for a
Yes.
therapist, look for someone who can help talk you through things.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you for that, Miss Buchanan.
As Dr. Bennett said, when you no longer feel yourself, when sadness, fear, stress, or anger is lasting for weeks, just lingering. When you feel like their daily task starts feeling overwhelming, and when you're becoming withdrawn from people you love, people who you enjoy being around, partying with, doing activities with, you want to suddenly pull away. When sleep or appetite changes significantly, it is usually something that we ought to be concerned about. And constant emotional exhaustion is
Yes.
usually a big sign. You are using alcohol or substances or unhealthy habits to cope. You start smoking cigarettes, or Jamaicans would say turn to the weed, and you tell yourself it makes you feel better. When you feel hopeless, numb, or stuck somewhere, and you just seem you can't get beyond it, it is time you begin to start to seek help. And when people around you begin to notice changes in your behavior, then it's something that you need to seriously think about. So those are just some of the signs that I'd say we ought to look out for.
Thank you for that. And Miss Rivers?
Yeah, I echo everything that they've said. Only thing I would add in addition to that is don't wait till you need the help to seek it. You don't have to be in crisis.
Absolutely.
You don't have to be in
Absolutely.
crisis.
You
Mental
don't
health,
have to be.
it's a gift. Go to the
Yeah.
therapist, sit down, especially if you got the insurance.
Yes.
Sit with them, get the evaluation and see what areas of your life you want to be able to improve and have them be your accountability buddy. There are so many people who come to me, they don't have no problem. They just need somebody to talk to, and they see me once a month, sometimes once every 3 months. And there are
Yeah.
some people who need to be here twice a week because they're in crisis. And so understand that you don't have to wait until your body's shutting down, you can't sleep, you're getting a migraine.
Mhm.
It can
Yeah.
simply be tomorrow morning. You wake up and you say, you know what, I'm gonna book that session and I'm gonna
Yes.
check in. Do it like an oil change. You don't have to wait till the light comes on to know that it's time.
That's true.
Hmm.
So, as we're listening to tonight, I want to encourage everyone not just to collect information, right? But just choose one tool, just one thing that feels realistic to you, something that you can practice until next week. Miss Rivers said, try it for 3 months, right? Just slowly practice one tool. If it doesn't feel right for you, try a different tool. And I'm going to hand it over to Miss Yvette, our VP.
So I have a couple questions in the chat, and some of them have been answered, but I'll still read through a couple.
Okay.
This one says, apart from medication and therapy, because it's unaffordable, what other resources are there for people who suffer from depression and fear and are antisocial and down all the time?
There are free online support groups and free services. And so I can defer to Dr. Buchanan for the island of Jamaica, but I know if you go to findhelp.org, you can find free and reduced cost services in your area. And sometimes they're virtual. You don't even have to go to the office, right? And so there are support groups where you can be anonymous. You can have no name in the Zoom and you can be with your camera off and you can just talk about what you're experiencing. And so findhelp.org for free and reduced cost services. You can put your zip code in and it's going to tell you where all the free services reside. And so for me, that'll be where you go because it's still about connection. You got to reach out and talk to somebody. And so there are lots of modalities for people who are recluse, who don't want to go out, who don't have the means. And so yeah, that's where I would start.
I have another one. It says, I'm the director of a sickle cell organization here in Jamaica. How can I, patients and caregivers who are living with an invisible disease and all the stigma that comes with it? I think it, I'm not seeing the rest of the question. Andrea, do you have the rest of the question? Because that's all I saw. Okay, let me scroll to find another one. Dr. Buchanan, what are your thoughts around how to change the language to more empathy, compassion, and kindness in Jamaica?
As mentioned earlier in our discussion, I think it's time this is led by the government. I think there ought to be a partnership with the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education. And we have to make mental health, emotional intelligence, conflict resolution a part of the curriculum in school. And this is at all levels. I also believe as a hospital, we have started a destigmatization campaign and we have started to educate. However, I do believe, as I've mentioned before, that this ought to be driven by the government of Jamaica, especially the Ministry of Health. We need to be moving across the length and breadth of Jamaica, going into schools, going into church. We need to be going at corners. We need to going to civic groups. That is what I've been doing as an organ, being a part of the Bellevue Hospital. But I think it ought to be driven across Jamaica. We need to have a campaign. It needs to be on social media. It needs to be on national television. We need to say to individuals, right? We need to go across the workplaces. When we use certain words, we ought to correct them. When I hear somebody say somebody's mad, I say someone is living with a mental health condition. When I hear somebody say somebody commits suicide, I take that opportunity to correct them and say die by suicide. So there ought to be some structured campaign being driven by the Ministry of Health. And there has to be some partnership with the Ministry of Education. We need to get them when they are young. If we start with the children will oftentimes go home and educate their parents. A lot of things that I know is because of my own children will come to me and say, Mommy, this is out of style now. The new thing is this. So I do believe that this kind of partnership is very, very important in educating Jamaicans. And certainly, I must say, as a family, we have a responsibility to our own family. It begins with us in our households as well.
Could I go back and respond to the question on sickle cell?
Sure.
So I put two links in the chat, one for Shakivia's Sickle Cell Foundation and another one for the Sickle Cell Disease Research Center, the foundation. The Sickle Cell Disease Research Foundation has funding. And I don't know if it's limited to the US or how that works, or you can do a partnership with Shakivia because I know she gets funding from them. But she invited me, the Shakivia's Foundation invited me to do a mental health talk with caregivers, with partners, and folks that are experiencing that are suffering with sickle cell and their caregivers. And we had a very candid conversation about the grief that comes with the disease. We talked about sex, we talked about connection, we talked about caregiver burnout. And so there are people who are willing to donate their time and show up in spaces to provide that perspective. You just have to reach out to the network of clinicians that are in the area and invite them to come speak to the population, because a lot of this is just conversations that need to be had so people can understand that people living with diseases still want to have a healthy life, and sex included. And we have these conversations virtually and in person. And so those are two resources for you there.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rivers. So we're going to move into, that concludes our Q&A, Sharita. So now you can go into your closing, okay?
I'm on mute. All right, ladies, thank you so much, Miss Rivers, Dr. Bennett, Miss Buchanan. We were honored to have you here tonight for our fireside chat. And before we leave out, I just want to summarize some of the things that we had within our three segments. So we explored what it means to carry strength, especially within cultures and communities. And we know that within our culture, there's subcultures within that, within our families. The resilience has always been necessary for our survival. So, in segment one, we talked about breaking the mask. We reflected on the messages many of us have learned about strength, vulnerability, and emotional expression, right? We acknowledged that while strength is something that can protect us, it can often be difficult for us to seek help as well, right? When we're struggling. Now, for segment two, where we spoke about real talk on mental health, we were able to name some of the realities people carry silently. It includes stress, burnout, trauma, grief, anxiety, just overall emotional, exhaustion. We explored the stigma, the cultural expectations, right? That often prevents us from seeking support. In segment three, we talked about tools for daily wellness, and we shifted towards like what really are some practical tools that we can use to heal ourselves, but also heal, our communities, right? So tonight is not just about, oh, I got an answer, or it's more about us creating a space for honesty, which is what we wanted to do tonight, for us to continue the conversation surrounding mental wellness, mental health, mental illness, everything mental health, not just in May, but every single month, right? Um,
Mhm.
if something tonight resonated with you, please do not ignore it. Lean into it. Talk to someone that you trust, someone that you can seek support from. Awareness is really the first step, before the next. So let's not just, again, have this conversation tonight and we just like log off. Continue talking about it, continue sharing about it, And again, thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you for everyone joining us tonight. We appreciate you. And I will hand it back over to our VP, Miss Yvette.
Thank you, Sharita. I think this is a time when everyone can come off mute and just give the panel and Sharita just a round of applause for the great job that they did in bringing awareness to mental health. And I think we have gotten some great suggestions and resources that we can use and practice. What I love is that many of them are just simple things that we can practice every day. Doesn't cost us anything, right? So I encourage you to go into that list that I just dropped in the chat. It's a curated list of resources. Go through them and see which one works for you. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, because you might know someone who could benefit from it. Okay? All right. Our next chat, Fireside Chat, is coming up next month, which is June 25th at 7 p.m. And this topic is going to be about protect what you've built. And I know many of us, I would say all of us on this call, we're all actively building our empires and we need to know how to protect it. So it's going to focus on estate planning, wills, trust, and health surrogacy for generational security. The link is up, but also the QR code is there. Go ahead, take out your phone, scan, register for it. It's a month away, but doesn't beat to do it early. Again, thank you so much for joining. Click on the link before you leave the chat, because once you leave it, you won't have access to it again. And I see you next month. Take care.